The town lay quietly beneath a thick, low-hanging mist, where silence seemed to seep into every crevice, becoming as much a part of life as the rustling leaves on the tall, old trees lining the main street. This was the kind of place that held a familiar rhythm, one that felt safe, unchanging, as though time itself had chosen to stand still here. It was the sort of town where neighbors knew each other's names, and where parents felt secure letting their children play freely on the quiet streets. And yet, in this seemingly peaceful town, something unseen lingered. A darkness that hid in the places no one looked, buried beneath layers of normalcy. Secrets, no matter how deeply hidden, have a way of clawing their way back into the light. She was a young girl with a smile that could warm even the coldest heart, her laughter ringing out like bells as she walked to school each morning, usually accompanied by a small group of friends. Her name was Sarah, and to anyone watching, she seemed to be just like any other child, bright and full of dreams. But Sarah was different. She had a kindness that made her beloved in the town. Everyone who knew her couldn't help but feel a soft spot for her. Teachers admired her curiosity, her friends enjoyed her sense of adventure, and her parents loved her deeply. She was the sort of girl who would stop to help an elderly neighbor carry groceries, who would give her favorite toy to a friend if it made them happy. Her future seemed wide open, filled with promise. But for all her warmth and innocence, Sarah was no stranger to fear. Even in her young life, Sarah had noticed things, moments that left her unsettled, that she couldn't quite explain. At times, she'd felt the weight of eyes on her back, turning around only to find empty streets or a shadow slipping out of sight. She often brushed these feelings aside, thinking she was simply imagining things. But the sense of being watched lingered, creeping into her thoughts like a cold draft. Occasionally, she would feel hesitant to go certain places alone, the hesitation rooted in nothing she could articulate, but more of a deep, instinctual warning. Her friends noticed too, teasing her lightly about her weird feelings, but Sarah never laughed along. She was aware that something wasn't quite right. One brisk autumn afternoon, as the leaves crunched underfoot and the sun dipped behind a line of trees, Sarah was on her way home from school when she spotted something unusual on the ground by the side of the road. It was a small, tarnished locket, half buried in the dirt, almost as if it had been lying there, waiting to be discovered. She bent down, dusting it off gently, her fingers brushing over the intricate designs on its surface. There was something hauntingly familiar about it, though she couldn't place where she might have seen it before. For a moment, she felt an odd chill, but then she shook it off and slipped the locket into her pocket, deciding she would examine it more closely when she got home. After all, it was just a piece of old jewelry, probably lost by someone who hadn't thought much of it. And yet, as she continued on her way, the locket felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried a weight all its own. At home, Sarah's parents were bustling about, preparing dinner, and they barely noticed as she slipped into her room, pulling the locket from her pocket and placing it on her desk. She held it up to the fading light streaming through her window, examining its intricate design. There was something strange about it, a sense of mystery that she couldn't shake. As she traced her finger over its worn edges, she noticed that it didn't open. She tugged at it a bit, but it seemed firmly sealed, refusing to give up whatever secrets it might hold. Eventually, she set it down, resolving to ask around the neighborhood the next day to see if anyone had lost it. That night, Sarah lay in bed, drifting in and out of sleep, her thoughts dancing between dreams and reality. In her half-asleep state, she thought she heard soft whispers, voices too faint to make out. She turned over, hugging her pillow tightly, dismissing the sounds as a trick of her mind. But then, as the clock ticked on in the silence of the night, she heard a distinct click, the sound of something unlocking. She sat up, her heart pounding, and glanced around her room. Her eyes landed on the locket, sitting on her desk in the dim light, untouched. It hadn't moved, and yet she felt a shiver run down her spine, as though it were watching her. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just a child's imagination running wild, but a feeling of unease settled over her, clinging like a shadow she couldn't shake. The next morning, as she walked to school, the unease still lingered. She clutched the locket in her hand, its cool metal pressing into her palm, almost as if it were pulsing with a life of its own. She glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out and demand its return, but the streets were as quiet as always. Her friends greeted her with their usual chatter, but Sarah found it hard to focus, her thoughts repeatedly returning to the strange, almost sinister trinket in her hand. A part of her wanted to throw it away, to be rid of it once and for all, but another part of her was drawn to it, compelled by the mystery it held. Little did she know, the discovery of that locket was only the beginning. The small, seemingly insignificant object would soon unravel a chain of events that would shake the entire town and reveal secrets darker than anything she could have imagined. As Sarah's connection to the mysterious locket deepens, she begins to feel the weight of its unknown history in ways she never expected. The locket seems to pulse with energy, drawing her in further with each passing day. She starts to hear faint, unsettling whispers when she holds it close, barely audible but enough to send chills down her spine. She finds herself compelled to investigate it constantly, even in the middle of mundane activities, her thoughts returning to the haunting curiosity it inspires. At school, her friends begin to notice her growing distraction and quietness, teasing her lightly about her haunted necklace. While most of them laugh it off as an odd phase, her friend Liam is different. He's known for his curiosity and willingness to believe in the extraordinary, and he listens closely as Sarah shares what she's been experiencing. Liam doesn't laugh or shrug it off. Instead, he leans in, eyes wide, and suggests they try to research the locket's origins together. Their journey begins at the school library, a place they know all too well from late-night study sessions. But this time, they're not looking for textbooks. They're looking for history, stories, and anything that could explain the strange object Sarah has found herself bound to. They uncover old records of the town's founding, journals from residents who lived there over a century ago, and local myths about tragedies and unsolved mysteries. Among the dusty pages, they find a chilling detail. Years ago, a young girl who lived nearby had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her story, marked with sorrow and whispers of the supernatural, feels eerily similar to what Sarah has been experiencing. Intrigued yet fearful, they decide to dig deeper. They find an old newspaper clipping in an article detailing the girl's disappearance. The article describes her as quiet, intelligent, and somewhat mysterious. A girl who had kept to herself until the day she vanished. Her family had been devastated, and the town had mourned her, but over time, her story faded into legend, woven into the tapestry of the town's folklore. One detail in the article catches Sarah's eye. The girl had been wearing a locket the day she disappeared. A locket described as unusual, antique, and cherished. Sarah's heart races as she reads, recognizing the description as matching her own locket. The connection is undeniable, and the weight of this discovery presses down on her. Could it be that this is the same locket, somehow returned to the world, calling out for attention and remembrance? The thought fills her with equal parts terror and fascination. Driven by a desire to help and uncover the truth, she decides to pursue the mystery further, even though something in her gut tells her to let it go. The tension between her and her parents begins to grow, as they notice her distracted behavior and late nights researching a topic she won't fully explain. She grows more distant, her room littered with books, articles, and notes on the girl's disappearance. Her parents urge her to focus on school, but she feels the pull of the mystery too strongly. Liam, seeing her descent into obsession, tries to encourage her to take a break. But Sarah is adamant that she's close to uncovering something important. In their search for more clues, Sarah and Liam decide to visit the oldest part of town, where some of the buildings from the girls' era still stand. Here, they find an abandoned house rumored to be where the girl had once lived. It's a crumbling structure, overgrown with weeds and long since forgotten by the people of the town. Something about the place feels heavy, as if the past is clinging to it with desperate hands. As they explore the old house, they notice strange details. The walls are lined with faded photographs, faces staring back at them from another time. Dust hangs in the air, and the silence is so thick it's almost suffocating. In one of the rooms, Sarah finds a small, dust-covered notebook tucked away in a drawer. Its pages are filled with hurried, scrawled handwriting, difficult to read but hauntingly familiar. She realizes, with a sinking feeling, that it's a diary, and the handwriting matches the girl's name from the newspaper clipping. As Sarah reads the diary, she discovers the girl's thoughts, her fears, and a life that felt stifled and full of secrets. One passage catches Sarah's attention, an entry about a locket. The girl describes it as a gift from her grandmother, an heirloom passed down through generations. She'd loved it dearly, but as time went on, she felt as though it carried more than memories. It seemed to carry burdens, voices, and shadows of those who had worn it before. The more Sarah reads, the more she feels the girl's emotions echo within her. The words on the page feel personal, as if the girl's voice is reaching out from beyond, pleading with her to understand. She finds entries describing strange dreams, eerie sightings, and a sense of being followed. Sarah realizes that she, too, has begun to feel these things, as if the spirit of the girl is somehow bound to the locket and to her. As the weeks pass, the tension in Sarah's life mounts. The whispers she hears when holding the locket become louder, almost intelligible, like fragments of sentences spoken from a distant, unseen place. Her dreams grow darker, more intense, filled with the girl's memories, fears, and the vague sensation of impending danger. It's as though the locket is channeling the spirit's unresolved sorrow and fear into her very soul. One night, after a particularly disturbing dream, Sarah wakes to find her room colder than usual, an unnatural chill that seeps into her bones. In the dim light, she sees a faint outline in the mirror, the ghostly image of a young girl, standing behind her with eyes that seem to hold centuries of pain. Sarah gasps, her heart pounding, as the figure fades away just as quickly as it appeared. She realizes that she's no longer just observing the spirit's past. She's now a part of it. Despite her terror, she feels a powerful urge to continue her search. She confides in Liam, who urges her to stop, but Sarah is relentless. The spirit has chosen her for a reason. She insists, and she needs to uncover the truth. Desperate for answers, Sarah revisits the old house one night, this time alone. She's drawn back to the room with the diary, feeling an almost magnetic pull to the place. She reads the final entries in the diary, which detail a fear that had overtaken the girl in the days before she vanished. A sense of being watched, followed, haunted. As Sarah closes the diary, she senses a shift in the air, as if the house itself is holding its breath. Suddenly, she hears footsteps echoing down the hall, growing louder, closer. Her pulse races as she realizes she's not alone. She turns, half expecting to see the ghostly girl again, but finds only shadows dancing along the walls. Panicked, she clutches the locket, feeling its cold weight against her palm, almost as if it's trying to protect her or pull her deeper into the mystery. In the days that follow, Sarah's life becomes a blur of fear and fascination. She starts to lose sleep, her mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories, both hers and the spirit's. She feels the girl's emotions as if they're her own, experiencing her grief, anger, and a burning desire for justice. The connection between them grows stronger, and Sarah begins to understand that the spirit is seeking something more than remembrance. It's seeking closure. One evening, Liam confronts Sarah, worried about how deeply she's entangled in the mystery. He begs her to get rid of the locket, to leave behind the dark presence that's consuming her life. But Sarah refuses, convinced that she's the only one who can help the spirit find peace. She explains that she feels a responsibility to finish what she started, even if it means risking her own safety. As they argue, a sudden thought strikes Sarah. The spirit's restless longing might not be rooted in vengeance or fear, but in a need to be acknowledged, to have her story told. She decides to return to the old house once more, believing that if she can connect with the spirit fully, she may finally understand what the girl wants. At the house, Sarah feels a familiar chill as she steps through the door, the locket heavy against her chest. She senses a presence, stronger than before, as if the spirit knows she's come for a final confrontation. She closes her eyes, whispering into the darkness that she's here to listen, to understand. As silence fills the room, a soft voice breaks through the air, distant yet clear. A voice full of sorrow, pleading for release. In a surge of emotion, Sarah speaks to the spirit, promising to tell her story, to keep her memory alive. She places the locket down in the center of the room, as if returning it to its rightful place. The air seems to lighten, the oppressive tension lifting, and for the first time, Sarah feels a sense of peace wash over her. She senses the spirit's gratitude, a silent farewell that lingers in the air. Returning home, Sarah feels different, as though a weight has been lifted from her soul. She decides to write down everything she's experienced, turning her encounter into a story that will be shared, remembered, and cherished. She realizes that the spirit's only wish was to be acknowledged, to have her life and pain remembered, so she could finally find peace. Though the journey has left its mark on her, Sarah knows that she's done the right thing. She feels the spirit's presence fade, leaving behind only a faint warmth and a lasting memory. And as she closes her notebook, she understands that some stories need to be told, no matter the cost. Sarah's obsession with the locket had morphed into an all-consuming pursuit, a labyrinth of emotions twisting through her mind. Each day felt heavier, as if a dark fog had settled over her thoughts, leaving her exhausted and on edge. Nights were the worst. Sleep was a fragile illusion that shattered the moment she closed her eyes. Dreams morphed into vivid nightmares, filled with chilling images of the girl, the same ghostly figure she'd first encountered, trapped in a cycle of sorrow and longing. The girl's wide eyes, brimming with desperation, seemed to pierce through Sarah's very soul, begging for release. Sarah could feel her grip on reality slipping, and her friends had begun to notice. Liam's concern turned into quiet desperation, his face etched with worry as he approached Sarah one late afternoon. He found her sitting in her room, the diary sprawled open on the floor beside her. "You need to stop this, Sarah. It's not healthy," he urged, his voice a mix of frustration and fear. "This isn't just a story anymore. It's consuming you." But Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the pages, her fingers tracing the words, feeling an unexplainable connection to the girl. "I can't, Liam. I have to know what happened. I can't just leave her like this," she replied, her voice a whisper, filled with determination. The thought of abandoning the girl's spirit gnawed at her, an anchor holding her fast. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah gathered her courage and headed back to the abandoned house. The air was thick with an unsettling energy as she approached, the old structure looming over her like a sentinel guarding its secrets. She clutched the locket tightly in her palm, feeling its warmth pulse against her skin, almost as if the spirit was calling her forward. Each step felt heavier, but she pushed through the fear that threatened to swallow her whole. Inside, the familiar darkness enveloped her, the musty smell of decay and neglect wrapping around her like an old blanket. The house creaked and groaned, as if it had come alive once more, resonating with the energy of the unresolved past. Determined, Sarah made her way to the room where she had first encountered the spirit. The air grew colder as she entered, and she felt the familiar chill run down her spine. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, calling out into the void, "I'm here. I want to help you." Silence hung in the air, but Sarah could feel the atmosphere shift, a subtle tremor signaling that she was not alone. Her heart raced, and as she opened her eyes, shadows began to dance around her. It was then that the spirit materialized, her form flickering like a candle flame. The girl's eyes, wide and filled with a mixture of fear and hope, locked onto Sarah's. "Why do you linger?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she tried to suppress the rising dread. The spirit seemed to shudder at the question, her translucent form wavering. For a moment, the room fell into a heavy stillness, the kind that felt charged with unspoken words and unresolved pain. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the spirit responded, "Help me remember." The words resonated deep within Sarah, igniting a spark of empathy. She understood now. The girl's anguish stemmed from being forgotten, lost in the shadows of time. Desperate to uncover the truth, Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the locket. The delicate piece glinted in the dim light, drawing the spirit closer. "This belonged to you, didn't it?" Sarah asked softly. The spirit nodded, her form flickering as she reached out, her ghostly fingers brushing the locket's surface. In that moment, a rush of memories flooded through Sarah's mind. Images of a young girl laughing, playing, and then a shadow falling across her joy. Sarah's heart ached as she saw glimpses of the girl's life, her innocence shattered by a terrible event that left her trapped between worlds. "Tell me your name," Sarah urged, her voice a soothing balm in the heavy air. "I can help you find peace." The spirit hesitated, her eyes clouding with the weight of her memories. "Elena," she finally whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. "I was lost." The revelation pierced Sarah's heart. She felt the girl's pain, the burden of her story begging to be shared. "Elena, I promise I'll tell your story. You won't be forgotten," Sarah vowed, feeling a connection deepen between them. But the shadows in the room began to shift, and Sarah sensed a darker presence lurking just beyond the edges of the light. "What happened to you, Elena?" Sarah pressed, feeling the urgency of their connection. "You need to tell me so I can help you." The spirit's form shuddered as she stepped closer, her eyes wide with fear. "He took me," she said, her voice trembling. "He wanted the locket, the power it holds." A chill ran through Sarah as she realized the implications. Who? What power? The spirit's gaze turned frantic, the shadows swirling around her growing more oppressive. "I was supposed to protect it," Elena continued, her voice rising in urgency. "I was chosen, but I failed." The weight of her words crashed down on Sarah like a tidal wave, the intensity of the spirit's emotions flooding the room. "You didn't fail. You're here now. You can still protect it," Sarah said, trying to offer comfort amidst the chaos. The air crackled with tension as Sarah felt the temperature drop further, shadows reaching out like fingers to pull her into their depths. She steeled herself, determined to face whatever darkness loomed within the house. "Elena, we can fight this together," she said, grounding herself in her resolve. The spirit seemed to waver, the fear in her eyes reflecting the danger that loomed just out of reach. "You have to leave. It's not safe," Elena urged, her voice urgent. "He's coming back." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted once more. the shadows coalescing into a form that sent chills down Sarah's spine. The dark figure loomed at the edge of the room, eyes glowing with malevolence. Fear threatened to consume Sarah, but she refused to back down. She gripped the locket tightly, channeling her courage as she stepped forward. "You can't have her," she shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness. The figure paused, its gaze locking onto Sarah with an intensity that felt like ice piercing her heart. "Leave this place," the figure commanded, its voice a low growl that echoed through the room. "You have no power here." But Sarah felt a surge of strength, fueled by the bond she had forged with Elena. "I won't let you take her," she declared, her determination unwavering. The shadows around her writhed, as if the darkness itself was angry at her defiance. As the confrontation escalated, Sarah felt the energy in the room shift, and a blinding light erupted from the locket, illuminating the darkness that surrounded them. The figure recoiled, a scream of rage escaping its lips as it was pushed back by the force of the light. "No!" it bellowed, retreating into the shadows, unable to withstand the power that Sarah and Elena had summoned together. In that moment, Elena's spirit began to glow, her form becoming more defined as she stood tall beside Sarah. "You did it!" Elena exclaimed, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and relief. "You've freed me." The darkness retreated, the oppressive weight lifting as the light enveloped them both. Sarah felt the warmth of the spirit's presence, a gentle reassurance that her fight had not been in vain. The room began to dissolve, and Sarah felt herself being pulled back to reality. She clutched the locket tightly, understanding that its power was now a part of her. "You'll always be with me, Elena," Sarah promised, her voice steady and resolute. "Your story will be told." With one last burst of light, the spirit faded, leaving behind a sense of peace that filled the room. As the house grew silent, Sarah stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. The stars twinkled above, a reminder that even in darkness, light could prevail. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the experience wash over her. She had faced the shadows, confronted the past, and emerged stronger, carrying the memory of Elena with her. Determined to honor Elena's story, Sarah vowed to write it down, to ensure that the girl would never be forgotten again. As she walked away from the house, a sense of purpose filled her heart. No longer just a story of tragedy, it had transformed into a tale of resilience, a reminder of the strength found in connection and understanding. With each step, Sarah felt the locket's warmth, a comforting presence reminding her that she was never truly alone. The darkness may have tried to silence the truth, but she had found her voice and would make sure Elena's memory lived on. She was ready to share the story with the world, a testament to the girl's spirit and the power of love that transcended even the darkest shadows. In the aftermath of Sarah's harrowing encounter with the spirit of Elena, the air felt lighter, as if the oppressive weight of the house had been lifted. Each step she took away from the abandoned building resonated with a newfound sense of purpose. The night sky sparkled above her, reflecting the inner transformation that had taken place. As she walked, thoughts whirled in her mind. Plans began to form about how she would honor Elena's memory. She envisioned a story that would bring the girl's pain and resilience to life. A narrative that would captivate readers and allow them to connect with the spirit she had come to know so intimately. Returning home, Sarah found herself consumed by the need to write. The glow of her laptop illuminated her room, casting a warm light over the clutter of notebooks and scribbled notes that had once felt chaotic. Now, they seemed to pulse with energy, each page a stepping stone leading her toward the truth she needed to express. Fingers flying over the keyboard, she poured out her thoughts, her emotions flowing freely as she recounted the events of that fateful night. Words spilled forth, weaving together Elena's story and her own. The two lives intertwined in ways that felt both surreal and profound. With each sentence, Sarah felt the connection between her and Elena strengthen, as if the spirit were guiding her, encouraging her to share not only the sorrow but also the beauty of hope that emerged from tragedy. The story began to take shape, a tale of loss, resilience, and ultimately redemption. It was not just Elena's story. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of darkness. As she wrote, Sarah could almost hear Elena's voice whispering in her ear, urging her to keep going, to ensure that the girl would be remembered long after the words were written. The process became cathartic for Sarah. Each night, she found herself retreating into the world of her story, escaping the mundane realities of her life. Friends and family noticed her absence, but they understood that she was navigating a journey of her own making. Liam, still concerned yet supportive, often checked in on her. "How's it going?" he'd ask, peering into her room where she often sat surrounded by papers. "It's coming together," she'd reply, a smile creeping across her face. "I think I'm finally finding my voice." His presence was a comforting reminder that she was not alone in this endeavor, and each interaction rekindled her determination to honor Elena's memory. Weeks passed, and Sarah found herself immersed in a whirlwind of research and writing. She began exploring themes of grief, memory, and the ethereal connections that bind souls together. Drawing from the raw emotions she had experienced, she crafted vivid scenes that mirrored her own encounters with Elena. The abandoned house transformed in her writing, a symbol of forgotten dreams, of spirits trapped in time, and of the powerful need for resolution. Sarah's prose took on a lyrical quality, capturing the essence of both the living and the dead, weaving their stories into a single tapestry. One evening, as she wrote about Elena's final moments, a profound realization struck her. The girl had not merely been a victim. She had been a protector, a beacon of light guiding others even in her darkest hours. This revelation fueled Sarah's narrative, transforming it into a celebration of Elena's spirit, her bravery, and her unyielding desire to be remembered. Each chapter became a tribute, a love letter to a life that had been tragically cut short yet remained vibrant in the memories of those who cared. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself editing and refining her work. She immersed herself in the world of publishing, exploring avenues to share Elena's story with a broader audience. The thought of being able to connect with others through her words filled her with a sense of purpose and excitement. She began crafting a proposal for literary agents, pouring her heart into the summary, showcasing the essence of the story and the emotional journey she had undergone while writing it. But as the final touches were put on her manuscript, a familiar unease crept back into her mind. Doubt, that insidious whisper that had haunted her during her writing process, began to rear its head again. What if the story wasn't good enough? What if no one cared about Elena? What if her words failed to do justice to the girl who had become so significant in her life? Sarah felt the weight of her insecurities threatening to pull her down, a reminder of the fears she had faced before. It was during one of these moments of doubt that Liam came to her aid once again. He had always believed in her talent, and she knew she could rely on him for encouragement. One evening, as they sat together in her room, Sarah expressed her fears. "What if I'm not ready? What if it all falls flat?" she confessed, her voice shaky. Liam turned to her, his expression earnest and reassuring. "You're ready. You've poured your heart into this. No one can tell Elena's story like you can. You owe it to her, and to yourself, to share it with the world." His words resonated deeply within her, reigniting the flame of determination that had begun to flicker. With renewed resolve, Sarah set her sights on the next steps. After making the final edits to her manuscript, she submitted queries to literary agents, each email a prayer that her story would resonate with someone who could help her bring it to life. Weeks passed, and while waiting for responses, Sarah threw herself into promoting the story on social media, connecting with other writers, and immersing herself in the literary community. She found comfort in sharing snippets of her work, receiving feedback and encouragement from those who understood the struggles and triumphs of the writing process. Then came the day when Sarah received an email that would change everything. It was from a literary agent who had read her query and wanted to see the full manuscript. Heart racing, she quickly sent it off, her mind swirling with excitement and anxiety. Days turned into a blur of anticipation, and finally, the email arrived. As she opened it, her heart raced with hope. The agent loved the story. They wanted to work together to refine it further and take it to publishers. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as a wave of relief washed over her. She had done it. She had taken a leap of faith, and it had paid off. As the reality of her success settled in, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. She reflected on her journey, the darkness she had traversed, and the light that had emerged from it. The process had not only transformed her understanding of grief and healing, but had also strengthened her belief in the power of storytelling. With Elena's spirit guiding her, she had uncovered her own voice, and in doing so, had forged a bond that transcended time and space. With her agent by her side, Sarah delved deeper into the publishing process, ready to share Elena's story with the world. Each step felt like a tribute to the girl she had come to love, a promise to honor her memory and ensure that she would never be forgotten. As the pages of her manuscript turned into a reality, Sarah knew she was not just a storyteller but also a guardian of Elena's legacy. Together, they would touch hearts, illuminate shadows, and remind others of the beauty that could emerge even in the darkest of times. As Sarah sat at her desk, the soft glow of her computer screen illuminated her features, revealing the weary but satisfied look in her eyes. She had just received the final proofs of her book, a tangible representation of her journey and the bond she had formed with Elena. The weight of her task was still fresh in her mind, but now it was accompanied by a sense of closure. Reflecting on her path, Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of emotions: grief, triumph, and an unshakable sense of purpose. This story, which had begun as a haunting mystery, had transformed into a heartfelt tribute to a young girl who had longed to be remembered. In the days leading up to the book's release, Sarah found herself in a whirlwind of preparations. She organized a launch event, reaching out to friends, family, and members of the community. The support she received was heartwarming, and it filled her with a sense of belonging. Each invitation sent was accompanied by a twinge of anxiety, yet it also served as a reminder of the connections she had nurtured along the way. As the event drew closer, she reflected on the profound impact that sharing Elena's story could have, not only on herself but on others who might resonate with the themes of loss and resilience. On the night of the launch, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. The local bookstore was filled with friends and supporters, each person holding a copy of her book, eager to witness the culmination of Sarah's journey. As she took the stage, the warmth of their presence enveloped her, and for a moment, the weight of her journey fell away. She spoke passionately about Elena, sharing snippets of their story and the lessons she had learned along the way. The room fell silent, captivated by her words, and Sarah could see in their eyes the connection she had hoped to forge, a shared understanding of grief and the healing power of storytelling. As the evening progressed, people began to approach Sarah, sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. One woman spoke of her daughter, lost too soon, and how she had found solace in stories like Sarah's. Another man recounted the struggles of navigating life after the passing of a close friend, expressing how important it was to keep their memory alive. Each conversation deepened Sarah's understanding of the ripple effect that sharing stories could have. She realized that through her words, she was creating a space for healing, a sanctuary where others could find comfort in their own pain. As weeks turned into months, the book gained traction, receiving positive reviews and sparking conversations about grief, memory, and the connections that bind us all. Sarah began receiving messages from readers who had found solace in Elena's story. Some expressed how her words had helped them process their own loss, while others shared how they had been inspired to honor loved ones in their lives. Each message was a reminder of the power of vulnerability and authenticity in storytelling, reinforcing Sarah's belief that sharing one's journey can forge connections that transcend time and space. In the midst of her newfound success, Sarah never lost sight of Elena. Each day, she took a moment to reflect on their journey together, honoring the bond they had forged. She visited the old house where she had encountered the spirit, bringing flowers as a tribute. Standing before the crumbling structure, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. This place, once filled with shadows, now held the memories of laughter, love, and the promise of hope. Sarah closed her eyes, envisioning Elena's smile, and she whispered a promise to continue sharing her story, ensuring that the girl would never be forgotten. As Sarah continued to write, she found herself drawn to new projects, inspired by the impact Elena's story had made on her life and the lives of others. She began exploring themes of healing and community, weaving tales that celebrated the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Each story she crafted was infused with the lessons learned during her journey with Elena, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found. One day, as Sarah sat in her favorite coffee shop, she received an unexpected message from a literary festival. They had heard of her work and wanted her to speak on a panel about the power of storytelling and healing. Excitement coursed through her as she accepted the invitation, recognizing it as another opportunity to share Elena's story with a broader audience. Preparing for the event, she reflected on the responsibility that came with being a voice for those who could not speak for themselves. The day of the festival arrived, and as she stepped onto the stage, the weight of her journey settled around her like a warm blanket. The audience filled with eager faces, she spoke not only about her book, but also about the importance of sharing our stories. Every narrative holds power, she began, her voice steady. Every story has the potential to heal, to connect, and to inspire. It is through our vulnerabilities that we find our greatest strengths. As she shared Elena's story and the lessons she had learned, she felt the energy in the room shift. It was palpable, an acknowledgement of the shared human experience of loss and resilience. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself increasingly involved in advocacy work, using her platform to raise awareness about the importance of mental health and grief support. She partnered with local organizations, organizing workshops that encouraged others to share their stories and connect with one another. Each event served as a reminder of the healing power of community, where individuals came together to support one another in their journeys. As Sarah navigated this new chapter in her life, she remained mindful of the delicate balance between personal and public life. While sharing her story was fulfilling, she also learned the importance of self-care and the need to protect her own mental well-being. With each speaking engagement and community event, she found solace in the connections she forged, yet she made time for herself, quiet moments to reflect, recharge, and honor the girl who had ignited her journey. In the final pages of her new book, Sarah included a section dedicated to readers. She encouraged them to share their own stories, to celebrate their loved ones, and to embrace the healing power of vulnerability. "Your story matters," she wrote, a mantra that had become a guiding principle for her. In sharing your truth, you create space for others to do the same. Together, we can weave a tapestry of connection, resilience, and hope. As she sat down to reflect on the journey that had led her here, Sarah recognized the profound impact Elena had on her life. The girl who had once been a haunting figure had transformed into a guiding light, inspiring a movement of connection and healing. Through her story, Sarah had not only honored Elena's memory but had also found her own voice, a voice that would continue to echo in the hearts of those who encountered her words. The closing of one chapter marked the beginning of another, and as Sarah gazed out at the horizon, she felt a sense of excitement for the future. There were stories yet to be told, connections yet to be made, and lives yet to be touched. With each step forward, she carried Elena's spirit with her, a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there is light to be found. As she embraced the possibilities ahead, Sarah understood that her journey was not just about telling a story. It was about creating a legacy of hope, a testament to the enduring power of love and the unbreakable bonds that connect us all.